Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, not to forget that this is the sports show which will definitely give you all information from all across the globe. But not to forget, you guys can surely link us, reach us at our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports. Both work for Twitter and Instagram. But anyways, what we'll do is we'll go to the headlines first. Yes, Pakistan versus South Africa, T20 series. Pakistan win the third T20 against South Africa by 4 wickets. Yes, West Indies versus Bangladesh. Yes, the second test in West Indies actually sweep Bangladesh's in the test series. And yes, from the world of NBA, Washington Wizards win 104-91 over Boston Celtics. Australian Open, yes, 8-time winner Djokovic defies without the injury and manages to go to the quarterfinals. And yes, from the world of golf, Daniel Berger, Eagles' last hole to seal the two-shot victory at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro. And yes, those were the headlines, and we were talking about Pakistan versus South Africa to begin with. Not to forget that Pakistan actually managed to give a clean sweep, pretty much a clean sweep against the Proteas. However, Proteas did win one match, but yesterday Pakistan managed to win the third match, the third T20 against them. The strange part was that, it was a tricky business for us, but overall it had been a very ups and downs, electrifying matches with regards to not only T20 but also the test matches. But to discuss more about this whole happening, we have Adrian Ephraim all the way from South Africa. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure. Okay, Adrian, we'll start with we'll talk starting from the test side, then we'll talk about the T20 side. When Pakistan managed to, start their test match against South Africa, the situation was kind of tricky for us because we were also going through a collapse that we had in New Zealand. But on the contrary, South Africa was all teamed up, summed up after winning against Sri Lanka the 2 tests. And when they came here, it was a very different situation for our boys and for the South African Proteas. How do you see the collapse that actually took place in this whole series that happened in Pakistan?
Yeah, it was a very important series for both teams. Both teams having a lot to prove. I think from a South African point of view, it was the first time that they had toured since the pandemic and been in a foreign country. Obviously, after 14 years, touring Pakistan was also different for them. But coming into the series, I think they would have felt a little bit confident having beaten Sri Lanka at home and gone to Pakistan with a little bit of confidence. Right. But as we know, things didn't work out as planned, and the batting collapses happened pretty much in every match, in every innings. Which was disappointing to see. And I think it does point to a number of factors. I think there's a tendency for the South African batting unit to bat as individuals. They go into a match situation and they're very much playing for themselves and for their own place in the team. There are a number of players on an individual basis that had to prove themselves, like Aiden Markram going into this test series, with a lot of expectation. He's been out of form for a long time, so he went there with pressure. Quinton de Kock, under pressure as a captain, he wasn't performing very well on an individual basis. So part of the unraveling and the collapse of the South African batting lineup was due to a lot of individuals feeling a lot of pressure, right, but then not batting as a unit. And I think Pakistan displayed that quite brilliantly, with some of their individual players, but they batted as a team. And I think that is what led to a lot of the collapse of the Proteas team in terms of their batting.
Right. The interesting part was that this was exactly almost the same numbers that we had back in New Zealand. Pakistan lost 2 test matches, then lost the first T20, then the second T20 we won, and the third one. We did give a situation to South Africans when they came. Our quarantining situation of the COVID-19 protocols are comparatively different, of course, with regards to how hard and fast rules are meant in countries like Australia or New Zealand, because if you remember, South Africa was already ready. That's why de Kock announced that they will be in different squad for T20 because they were mentally prepared for the Australian visit. How did that impact the team's morale?
I think being in a different country, being as part of a bubble, they would have had a lot of expectation. They would have done a lot of preparation, a lot of protocols being formed, and obviously, hearing that the Aussie tour was cancelled, that would have definitely been a dampener on the South Africans' mood. After all the preparation, there's a lot of mental preparation that goes into preparing for a test series,
Right.
and particularly for the South Africans. So yeah, that would have the decision by Australia would have impacted them mentally, and then having to tour Pakistan, continue to see out that series. It would have definitely creeped into their behavior on the field and their mentality. I would say.
Right. I would definitely agree to the fact that Pakistan did have that edge that you're talking about. Obviously, the home ground edge. Well, how do you see things shaping up for us in the future? Because now we have a visit tour coming in for South Africa, and we'll probably be flying into South Africa. So how would that series come out to be? Because this series was pretty much on one-sided situation with regards to how Pakistan managed to handle the entire situation. Even the the third T20 also proved them as more of a stronger team, even though there were some new people in Pakistan cricket team as well, some new additions. There were some new additions in South African team. But how do you see us, for instance, Pakistan cricket team being in South Africa? How would that go by?
Well, firstly, I want to thank Pakistan for coming to our rescue and agreeing to tour South Africa. I think that was very generous of the PCB,
Right.
and I think it was a great decision on behalf of the players and everyone.
Right.
I see the series being, look, I think South Africa will be a lot more competitive on their home ground. They will know that they need to make amends for what happened in Pakistan.
Right.
So they will they will welcome Pakistan with open arms, but it'll be a tough series. I expect Pakistan, having come off this victory in both series, to come into South Africa with a lot of confidence. They've got a really great bunch of players. Their bowling unit is fantastic. So I expect their bowlers to perform quite well in South Africa.
Right.
They'll find some of the wickets quite helpful for them in terms of their speed. But I ultimately expect South Africa. South Africa should expect to win. They have the talent and they have the home ground advantage.
Right.
And of course, being in a bubble, in a biosafe environment, might be a little bit difficult for Pakistan than it is for South Africa.
Right, right. So currently, not only this, how did you find the new team, the new formed squad of Pakistan? I think for the first time there's a bit of consistency with regards to how we kind of managed to get Pakistan cricket team there, because we've always had the collapses, and I think those were the collapses that people were pinpointing fingers at. But now we do have that straightforward, the Test squad and the T20 squad. How do you see these changes in Pakistan cricket team?
Yeah, I mean it's really exciting time for Pakistan cricket. I mean, there's some really good players emerging. Mohammad Rizwan, Fawad Alam. Even the older guy, Nawan Ali, in the Test team. All really good and talented players that have really stood up when those big moments came for Pakistan in those series. Hassan Ali, fantastic bowler.
Right.
And I think he was ultimately the undoing of South Africa. I expect them to be as methodical and as confident coming into this series. I expect them to perform really well, and I really like the way that they've managed both squads and both teams of the T20 and the Test squads. I think there's a really nice balance between the batsmen and the bowlers. And when they do have a mini collapse, it's great to see that players down the order are standing up as well. Fawad Alam in the first test.
Right.
It's really good that a lot of players can seize that big moment in the Pakistan team and make it their own and change the match for the team.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Sometimes focus more on the top-notch batsmen, and we think that we carry on their journey, their legacy, but then the team has to play as a team. And I think that probably brought Pakistan cricket team to the level that they had to. Okay, one thing more. Do you think major changes are expected in your team when South African squad goes back to their home country?
I honestly don't think so. I think there may be questions around a Faf du Plessis, although a man of his experience is difficult to leave out in a team.
Right.
he really underperformed in the tour to Pakistan. He'll be disappointed with his batting. I don't foresee a lot of changes, to be quite honest. I think the nucleus of the team, and they've got a really good squad. I think it's a mentality thing. I really think that the players need to understand their different roles in the team, and they need to bat as a unit. We often find, like I said, a guy like Quinton de Kock will be there with the tailenders, and he's kind of holding up the team at some stage. It might be Temba Bavuma, but the batting consistency needs to happen much earlier on, and they need to bat as a unit. Rassie van der Dussen probably is due for a century. He's got close, and he's had about 45 innings now.
Right.
Coming in at number 3, you need a guy like him to really bed down and get 100, and people to bat around him.
Right.
Currently, that's not happening in the South African team.
Right. Even with regards to how, let's even look at our team squad. Let's talk about Mohammad Rizwan. I think he's probably shown us more of the consistency, as in the athleticism, the consistency. Because I think for any team, what truly lacks is if it lacks the consistency. His century, or not only his century, but there's been so many times that he's put in his best alongside Babar Azam. So how do you see this T20 specifically? Let's talk about, even if you remember, I still remember the test match. The run out was a brilliant run out in which Mohammad Rizwan was actually flying towards the wickets. So how do you see these passionate cricketers evolving with time? Obviously, Mohammad Rizwan has a long way to go. How do you see that evolving for him?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. The key word is consistency, and that is the mark of really good T20 teams. Because the turnover is so quick. There's literally a day or a few hours between matches, and for a player to be consistent, he's got to string together a number of performances. Right. And I think guys like Rizwan is a perfect example of that. He's becoming a bit more confident. He's going to be a bit more consistent, and if he does that, he will lead the team to many more victories.
Right.
And the same for any of the other top players.
Yep. We're looking forward for more electrifying gameplay from both the teams, definitely in South Africa. So what we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and once we come back from it, we'll further discuss more with regards to Pakistan versus South Africa. See you guys after the break. Welcome back from the break, and yes, we were discussing Pakistan versus South Africa. The T20 series, obviously the Test series eventually came up to a conclusion. Pakistan eventually managed to win 2 Test matches and 2 T20s. And the last T20 that was actually happened was yesterday, which was the 3rd T20, and Pakistan won by 4 wickets. And not to forget that a debutant spinner Zahid Mahmood managed to take 3 wickets for 40 runs, and Pakistan won the series by 2-1. So we still have Adrian with us. So Adrian, let's come over to discussing more on the South African squad. Not to forget that South Africa did fight to win, but yes, as you said, that there could be, or they've had that bio bubble feeler to different players, but some key individuals actually managed to bring out their talent. So would you like to enhance more on that?
Yeah, I thought the South African bowlers really stood out for me on this tour, far more than the batting. Obviously, players like Hendrik Nokia taking a 5 in his first Test match on the subcontinent. I thought for a fast bowler to do that was quite exceptional, particularly in some of the conditions that obviously favoured batting or spin bowling. George Lindy, coming into the team, a new guy taking a 5 with a broken finger. He just showed the kind of tenacity that is required when you're touring the subcontinent. And I think it may have been something that the South African team as a whole can learn from, to really dig deep. A guy like Hendrik Nokia, it wasn't easy for him to, he bowled like 25 overs to take those five wickets. And he was quite economical on top of that. I think he went for just under 3 runs and over. I thought he applied himself really well. I thought George Lindy applied himself really well as well. Keshav Maharaj also, when conditions suited him, he was able to trouble the Pakistan bowlers. Kagiso Rabada, a little bit disappointing, but he'll come right. I think the conditions just didn't suit him. I don't think he was in the best perhaps frame of mind, right, or perhaps physical state. We just never know with these kind of things, but perhaps he was just having an off series. I think he's earned credibility over the years, so I'm not concerned about Kagiso. I thought the bowlers were really, really good. Bjorn Mulder, the young all-rounder coming through the ranks, he needs a bit more time. I think what South Africa has struggled to find is a replacement for Vernon Philander.
Right.
Now, if Vernon was in the team, he would come in after Rabada and Nokia, or even with the second new ball, and he'd be really effective. He would get those breakthroughs. He would break a partnership. He would really come through for the South African team, but he's not there anymore. And I don't think Bjorn Mulder is at that level yet. I think he needs more time, and I think they will give him that time in the South African team. So I'm interested to see in how he comes along as a bowler, as a bowling all-rounder, as it were. And then there was, as I said, George Lindy, fantastic bowler. He's got a long future with the Proteas team. No doubt about that.
Right. Let's talk about de Kock's captaincy. Obviously, as discussed earlier, that it was his last match, Test series as a captain, as a Test captain actually. His body language obviously wasn't. I think we could say it more positive, or there was something missing, and obviously it did affect the entire team's performance as well. Because if the captain has that feeler, so how do you see that impacting the entire team and the squad in the future?
Body language is so important, and it's so important for the captain to have the right body language. And yes, Quinton de Kock by nature is a very, on the field, his body language is quite relaxed. He does tend to show it in his eyes sometimes that he's a bit worried. He can't hide his emotions very well.
Right.
But for a captain, you need to take that, you need to internalize those feelings, and you need to put on a brave face for your team. Right. And then you then allow them to build their courage and build their confidence. I don't think Quinton de Kock did that on this tour. I think he let his emotions show a little bit. Right. I don't think he provided that tenacity and that driving spirit that a captain does need. Right. Graham Smith was a really good captain at that. He would get the guys going. He'd get their spirits up. And I think with Quinton stepping aside now, it does leave the South African team a little bit unsure as well, with a new captain coming in, most likely Dean Elgar. He's going to need some time to lead and find his way within the team. I think having Faf du Plessis around might still help them, but sometimes it can be a hindrance. Having the old guy there, having the previous captain around, kind of might undermine the new captain's authority and amongst the players. But the South African team are going to have to handle that situation. We can't have an ideal situation all the time. I think Faf still has some value as a batsman in the team. Right. But in terms of his leadership, it will also be important. But I think the transition from a Quinton de Kock now to a new captain might have an effect, certainly for the first couple of matches. Right. But yeah, South Africa do need to settle on a permanent captain, a long-term captain that they can build a team around, right, and a team that is confident in their captain.
Right. Even with regards to captaincy, it kind of gets difficult sometimes when you have a lot of pressure. For instance, even with Babar Azam, he's like the Test captain, and he's the ODI captain. So all that pressure comes up to the captain as well. So, for instance, because right now we don't really know who's going to be the next captain, but as you said, there would be a lot of pressure. Do you think he should be the same captain for all three teams or not?
Babar Azam still certainly. You talking about Quinton de Kock or Babar Azam?
No, I mean, okay. What I was suggesting, like Babar Azam is already given 3 captaincies. So what I'm saying is, yes, for instance, any new captain is assigned to the Test squad of the Proteas. Would it be better for Proteas to have him as the captain for the T20 and ODI squad as well?
In an ideal world, yes. Let's be honest, Babar Azam is a special player, and I think for South Africa to have a player like that, yes, Quinton de Kock does seem that guy who can play in all different formats. Right. But to find another captain who can play in all 3 formats and remain the captain for all those teams is going to be difficult for South Africa. Right. We don't necessarily have a man of Babar Azam's quality that can lead all different types of formats. Right. But it's certainly the hope. I certainly think there is a bit of consistency we had when Faf du Plessis was the captain in all three formats. I think there was an identity and a team identity that was built around Faf du Plessis, which I think is lost now. With different captains for different formats. Heinrich Klaassen for the T20s, and obviously now with perhaps Dean Elgar as the Test captain coming in. In the ideal world, a captain should be a captain for all three formats if you have the talent and the skills to pull it off.
Perfect. We've talked pretty much about Pakistan versus South Africa and looking forward for an interesting match ahead. Would definitely want to talk about another quick word with regards to West Indies versus Bangladesh and how the West Indies actually managed to win the two matches. Well, any quick word on how they actually rose from the ashes? Because the start of West Indies was obviously not as expected, but they eventually managed to just take their victory.
You can never, people like to write the West Indies off quite often, and I think justifiably so. And I think the West Indies have showed great character by coming through this series against Bangladesh, who were difficult to play, on home soil. And it's just been, it's fantastic to see a West Indies team that is rising from the ashes, as you say. It's long overdue. I think they've been through many decades, 2 decades of really tough performances, administrative issues. The game of cricket needs a good West Indies team. And if you look at throughout the ages, when cricket was at its finest, it was always the West Indies teams that were involved in those matches and in those moments.
True.
So I'm thrilled to see the West Indies winning again and performing outside of their country and against really tough opposition. And Bangladesh is an exceptional team.
Right. Anyways, thank you, Adrian, so very much for being a part of our show and discussing all the insights about cricket, not only from Pakistan versus South Africa, but also West Indies versus Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute.
That was all about cricket, but not to forget that, this is definitely a sports show, so we definitely have more news with regards to sports. So let's quickly jump over to the NBA side. Yes, Washington Wizards actually managed to win 104-91 against Celtics on Sunday. When not to forget that Celtics won 16 games this season against Washington Wizards, and Washington Wizards right now are at the 15th spot and Celtics are on the 5th spot, which is definitely going to increase with regards to the victories that they've been carrying, and it's been an interesting take with regards to the NBA. Now I'll switch over from the NBA side to the Australian Open. Yes, the Australian Open situation is interesting because 8-time winner Djokovic won against Milos on Sunday. Not to forget that Djokovic also was not feeling too well. He had an injury that he was recovering from, but he still managed to win this match with 5 sets win, which is interesting for him. And not to forget that, he's looking forward on stepping to the next level because he's moved on to the quarterfinals, and he already had some abdominal issues and injury over the five-way win over Taylor. But anyways, that is how a professional player would actually look into the pains, and he will try to grab whatever he can. But Djokovic is obviously spot on individual with regards to his performances, and he's actually won 4 Grand Slam championships. So we're definitely looking forward for more coming up his way. Anyways, that was the Australian Open. Last but not the least, let's go to the world of golf. Yes, Daniel Berger actually managed to win the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro, and the title was won on Sunday. And he secured basically a 2-shot victory over Maverick McNeely, which is definitely good with regards to his performance as a golfer. Berger won this is the second time, by the way, that he won since the PGA Tour and after returning from the COVID-19 situation. But anyways, this is how sportsmen do truly work, that they definitely do not give up, even if they've been through the COVID-19 situation. But anyways, this was from the world of sports. Anyways, guys can surely reach us on our social media handle, which is @the weight of Indus News Sports. Till then, take good care of yourself, and bye-bye.